Hey everyone, Roman Prokopchuk here. Ukraine War News, October 10th, 2022. The Kremlin named the Russian commander of the Aerospace Forces, Army General Sergey Surovikin, the new commander of the Russian operation in Ukraine. And this appointment has generated positive feedback within the nationalist community. Ukrainian forces continued counteroffensive operations in Kharkiv and Luhansk Oblasts. Russian forces continued establishing defensive positions in northern Kherson Oblast. Russian forces continued to attack settlements around Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and west of the Donetsk City. Ukrainian forces continue to shoot down Iranian-made Shahed-136 drones. Belarus officially accused Ukraine of preparing a strike on its territory, and Iranian Shahid UAVs spotted in eastern Ukraine. And of course, that senseless attack across Ukraine in terms of missile and drone strike hitting a large part of which have been in Kiev, hitting infrastructure and civilian areas, hitting targets like pedestrian bridges or targeting pedestrian bridges, targeting public areas, targeting schools. One was hit outside of a playground and other areas, basically trying to inflict as much terror as possible. There has been a strike in the city or outside of the city that I was born in, Lviv. They took out the electricity, the water, and the internet. Air sirens were on all day for the most part, and people were in bomb shelters and subways, wherever they can seek shelter. There's been a lot of videos, a lot of firsthand videos coming out of Ukraine about this. Apparently, Vladimir Putin did this as a response to the quote unquote terrorist attack on the Kurtz Bridge, which the bridge was illegally built. It was built from Russia to occupied and annex Crimea, prior to which really the main mode of transport across the Kerch Strait was ferry. But the bridge was hit. There's a railway component of the bridge that was used to transport ammunition, tanks, other military equipment into Crimea, then from Crimea to Kherson Oblast, Melitopol, Zaporizhia, and other areas that Russia has been waging war on Ukraine and occupying. So this was a valid target in terms of what Ukraine did. Putin was salty about this because, one, it happened on his birthday, and two, it was part of his, legacy in terms of annexing and getting Crimea back, building this $3 billion, behemoth structure to have a direct link from Russia to Crimea. And, how dare Ukraine hit it? So instead of, logistically improving their military and, plugging holes with these mobilized troops, they go after civilian infrastructure and civilians as a whole to instill terror. Well, guess what's going to happen with that? Ukrainian people and population is going to get more pissed. Ukraine pleading for more Western and NATO weapons and defense systems is potentially going to come sooner in terms of helping to protect the skies and protecting major cities around Ukraine, and it's only going to infuriate the military of Ukraine. So you saw the counteroffensive of Kharkiv. They're going to be only more resilient and determined and have more to fight for, where the Russian military morale is low. The KIA, up until I checked last, is almost at 63,000. Thousands upon thousands of military equipment lost or seized. Russia has been the biggest provider of military aid to Ukraine, technically, because in terms of tanks, Ukraine has gotten confiscated, took possession of more tanks, more personnel carriers, more other pieces of equipment, artillery pieces than countries have donated and provided to Ukraine. So a large part of the fighting force and the hardware Ukraine is using, it's gotten off of Russia, mainly through, the Kharkiv counteroffensive, where they abandoned everything, other areas of Ukraine where they were able to get undamaged equipment. Some was damaged, was able to be fixed. So it's kind of crazy. And counteroffensives are still continuing. Obviously, it's starting to rain. It's getting muddy. In terms of terrain, those tanks and armored carriers are almost impossible to travel through that kind of thick mud. I mean, they have to stay on the road really. So, and cold and winter is coming. So Kherson, there's still a push from northern Kherson down, where about a week and a half ago, those Russian lines broke, and Ukraine is pushing into, obviously, further into Luhansk and Donetsk Oblasts after retaking all of the Kharkiv Oblast. So that's obviously still going on. HIMARS and additional military equipment are en route. So whenever they get there, that should obviously be beneficial in terms of more ammunition, more ways to deliver that ammunition. So it's kind of crazy how Vladimir Putin is doing things like this to appease that far left, the Warhawks, in terms of the government, of the Russian government, and to hide and cover under the, I guess, the rug, all the military failures that have gone on since February. So that, you're going to throw hundreds of thousands of men into this. I mean, I think more men have fled from Russia than actually showed up for this draft. I believe the number is up to 600 or 700,000 or so. So that's kind of comical, where, push comes to shove. It was all right. The special military operation was cool for like the last 5-6 months, but when you're drafted now, suddenly you're anti-war and anti-whatever. So like, let's not be fooled by that. Obviously there's good Russians. There's the ones that, are against the war, but don't speak out because of the laws in Russia. And a lot of people that were speaking out, it looks like, that were arrested or being called up or drafted or conscripted, whatever word you want to use. So there's that. There's the ones that are already found internationally and have stayed out of Russia. Now, the ones that have left are also out of that call-up pool, that mobilization pool. So some of the people that were shown to being mobilized, they were not battle ready. They weren't provided any kind of superior equipment. They've, sent out letters and phone calls that those troops should be calling their wives and girlfriends and whoever, and requesting tampons and stuff like that in case they get shot, to clog up the actual wound. So it's a big fiasco. It's unfortunate that this many people have had to pass away and die for nothing. At the amount of soldiers lost on the Russian side, they've lost more men in 7 months than the U.S. has lost in a decade in Vietnam, or in the whole time that they were in Vietnam. So that's an astronomical figure, and those KIA'd on the Russian side, or on average 300 to 500 men a day, or are dying. For what though? Like, you're there doing what? Attacking your neighbor because, one, you were on a military exercise, then you were denazifying, now you're doing something else, and just fighting for what? For nothing. You have low morale. You're poorly equipped at this point, running out of supplies in some areas, like around Kherson, and for what? It's 2022 going into 2023. What is this going to accomplish? And you push two more nations into NATO. You pushed Ukraine into applying for the European Union, applying to NATO. Obviously, there's stipulations in that because they can't be accepted in wartime. I mean, they can, but as soon as they're done, Article 5 calls up then, like, attack on one is an attack on all. So that theoretically would drag in every other NATO nation. But it's just silly to see, Putin's 70 years old. What does he have to, like, what is he doing? It's like leader after leader. Russia has not learned. The people haven't stood up and picked a leader that is for Russia. And you don't have to be weak, but you don't also have to be a bully. Like, Putin, I guess, respects power and action and military might. So it's absurd. And the arguments that Ukraine could have avoided this and stopped. Well, what could have happened? They could have just laid down their arms, and 200,000 soldiers would have rolled into Ukraine, and then what? Basically absorbed all of Ukraine into Russia and called it a day. So there's been a little saying that all Ukraine or Russia has to do is go back home, and the war is over. If that happened, if Ukraine put down their arms, there would be no more Ukraine. So I really appreciate everybody listening. Slava Ukraini, Slava Bohu, Slava Nazi, Slava Heroyam, Heroyam Slava. God bless.